How we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today, with a lot of big news circulating the UFC, with some big announcements, UFC 318, UFC Atlanta coming to mind, I thought I would break down the fights that have been announced, and also build potential cards for these events. Some of these events already have a lot of fights booked for them, like Atlanta and Baku, but I thought I would just add either a fight or a couple fights, kind of structure it how I think it should be. Starting with, in chronological order, UFC Atlanta, whose main event is Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. This is a great fight, honestly. I really think that this fight makes a whole lot of sense, number 4 versus number 6. Joaquin, undefeated at welterweight in the UFC as of now. I believe he's now 7-0 in the welterweight division. Andre Fialho, Wonderboy, Covington, Ruziboyev. I think he's 7-0, somewhere around there, either 6 or 7-0, with some finishes here and there. Of course, finishing Colby and Wonderboy and Fialho, coming to mind, Luque as well. He's running through the old heads right now, and this is a fight that is a interesting matchup. We don't know how Kamaru looks anymore. We haven't seen him at welterweight since UFC 286. We saw him at middleweight at 294, but besides that, there's been nothing but crickets from his side of the podcast booth. And as you all know, my profile picture is Kamaru Usman. He is my favorite fighter of all time. I actually have the photo of him knocking out Jorge Masvidal on my wall. But I do believe that this is a rough matchup for him, and I think that he probably... Oh no, I'm so sad. It's so sad, it made my fucking voice crack. I think Kamaru probably loses to Joaquin Buckley. You gotta take in external factors. Kamaru is going to be 38, I believe, when this fight takes place. He's going to have such a long layoff. He skipped the entirety of 2024 and has missed already. Going into this fight will be basically 6 months of 2025 as well, including 2 months of 2023. So essentially he's missed out on basically 20 months of activity, which is fucking horrific, honestly. And that's from his middleweight fight with Khamzat on 10 days notice, which it is an interesting matchup because it's like he almost like arguably had a draw with Khamzat. Like he arguably should have gotten a draw there. But that's also so long ago, and now it's a completely different matchup. Joaquin's not going to gas out after the first round and break his hand, right? He's going to honestly be able to push a pace on Kamaru and actually maybe even wrestle with him a decent amount. On the feet, Kamaru, of course, has a jab, has a 1-2, has the power, and Joaquin, although he does seem unbeatable, we have to remember his escapade at middleweight where he was getting chinned left and right by most people, besides Imavov somehow. Every other person at middleweight knocked him out besides him in his losses. But anyways, I think Joaquin is too explosive. I think he's going to be too young as well. I don't know if he knocks out Kamaru necessarily. I think he could maybe get a TKO, though. Maybe kind of pitied. Maybe he hurts Kamaru against the fence, kind of presses him up there, kind of unloads, kind of has him covering up, and then the ref kind of just seems like it's like an Israel Alex Pahea type thing where he's kind of just swaying around and allowing himself, kind of trying to like Rocky Balboa his way out of it, but then the ref is like, you're not doing anything, I'm gonna stop it. I could see something like that maybe happening. But Joaquin, man, if he beats Kamaru, he arguably deserves a title shot more than some people. Probably deserves it more than Shavkat Rakhmonov in a way. I don't know how Shavkat Rakhmonov is number 2 in the division. I don't even know who the highest person he beat was, because I'm pretty sure he fought down against Ian Gary and Wonderboy. So I don't know how he's just all of a sudden just been able to be promoted so high. Maybe it's because of inactivity, most likely. But Joaquin, if he beats Kamaru, which I think he probably will definitely deserve a title shot more than him and put him in line for a fight with, either Ian Gary, if he wants to take a step down, or maybe a fight with Shavkat Rakhmonov, depending on who you want to. Welterweight's becoming so top-heavy at the moment, so we'll see what's all going on. There's so many moving pieces now. I think stylistically the matchup is very interesting, seeing if Joaquin's going to be able to implement his peekaboo-type style against Kamaru, but nonetheless, I think it'll be very interesting. I'll try and break it down further when the event comes closer. We move to the co-main event already announced, Rose Namajunas versus Miranda Maverick. I don't really care about this fight. I don't think anyone else does. I think everyone watching this video wants to see me move on to another fight, which I'm going to give you the luxury of. I think Rose beats her. I think that's pretty standard. I don't think Miranda Maverick is good enough to beat Rose Namajunas. So it's about it. Maybe I have to watch more tape on her. I don't know. But from what I remember, Miranda Maverick had like a competitive fight with Ion Barboza. So we move to the... Oh, I already clicked. I think Tim Elliott, Kaya Sakura is a matchup the UFC should look to do. I think it could serve as a featured fight for this card. One, Tim Elliott and Kaya Sakura is a big enough name to serve him on a main card of a crowded event. I don't think that Kaya Sakura should wait super long to get back in there. He didn't take a whole lot of damage. And also, I think Tim Elliott's kind of a layup for him, honestly. I think if he can avoid the takedowns, I think he can shin Tim Elliott easily. It is a interesting fight because Tim Elliott is super awkward, hence the nickname Awkward MMA. But I think it's an interesting matchup. Tim Elliott seen around somewhat. He hasn't fought in a while. When was the last time Tim Elliott even fought? Was it fucking... When was the last time? Was it the Suma Dwerji fight? Or was it a fight afterwards? I don't even remember. But I think him and Kaya Sakura could serve very well. Rankings-wise, I think it makes sense. Kaya Sakura is just kind of in there because he fought Pantoja, and they've kind of like felt the need to throw him in the rankings. Tim Elliott hasn't fought in a while, from what I remember at least. I think he needs to fight, to be honest. He's kind of just sitting on a top 10 ranking doing nothing. So, and he doesn't have any name value, really. I think people like Tim Elliott because they kind of like feel bad for him in a way. If you know, if you know, you know. But yeah, I think Kaya Sakura Tim Elliott is a viable matchup. Let's move to the next matchup I have made up, which is Chris Curtis, Cesar Almeida. I think this fight makes a whole lot of sense. Cesar Almeida is now 3-1 in the UFC, I believe. TKO Dylan Budka in his debut. Lost to Roman Kopylov, but he also then went on to beat Ihor Potieria and then just knocked out Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Cesar Almeida has enough highlight ability to put him on a main card. And Chris Curtis, I think a lot of people know who Chris Curtis is, just because he trains with Sean Strickland. And also, he is a entertaining fighter if he goes against a very good striker. The Roman Kopylov fight was super fucking entertaining. Can't say the same about the Cesar Almeida fight with Roman Kopylov. But anyways, outside of the first round at least. Nonetheless, I think that this fight is a great matchup to throw on here. For one, I think it'll be a very interesting striker matchup. Chris Curtis doesn't really wrestle a whole lot. He's very pocket boxing, kind of staying sheltered up, throwing a jab, being able to land on people. And Cesar Almeida is a very kickboxy heavy style. Also, I think this could turn into a matchup where we see Chris Curtis have another hissy fit again, due to maybe getting eye poked or low kicked or something along those lines. We see Cesar Almeida doing that to a lot of people. But also we've seen Chris Curtis get knocked out in the UFC now. We've seen it happen. And Cesar Almeida, you know, he's coming off a blistering KO in the Apex. I think we should throw... Both of these guys are coming off Apex KOs, but one of them won. I think that we should see these guys in an arena. I think they put on fun fights. I think it makes a lot of sense. The next matchup on UFC Atlanta already confirmed, such as the main and co-main. Alonzo Menafield versus Umar Sy. I have this opening up the main card because I think that Umar Sy still relatively unknown compared to a lot of people above him on the card. Alonzo Menafield is ranked at light heavyweight. He's number 14. He might move down to number 15 depending on how they rank Zhang Mingyang. But I think Alonzo Menafield, Umar Sy has the ability to be very entertaining. I don't think it should be demoted to a prelim type card. I think it should be a main card fight. Alonzo Menafield maybe didn't have the most entertaining fight with Julius Walker of all time, but it was like sloppy in a way because they both took it on such short notice. Umar Sy, Alonzo Menafield, I think this fight has a very high ability to be a finish. So, yeah, I think that's what they should do. Let's move to the next card that got some announcements for it. UFC Baku in Azerbaijan. Of course, we all know the main event. Khalil Rountree Jr. versus Jamahal Hill. While this fight doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Azerbaijan, I think we can all fucking agree this matchup is fucking nuts. It was supposed to happen this past weekend in Kansas City, but then Jamahal Hill pulled out with a leg injury and then just rescheduled 2 months later because, you can just do that. I think this is a very interesting matchup. I think Khalil might win. I don't know. It's so weird because, Khalil has such a weird career where you see him having such a competitive fight in the first 2 rounds with Alex Pereira, and then you see him, having a competitive fight with Anthony Smith just prior. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense how he goes from having a competitive fight with Anthony Smith, of all people, but then goes on to have a competitive fight with fucking Alex Pereira. So, there's a lot of losses hidden in there as well, the Mikhail Oleksiejczuk no contest, the Ion Cutelaba loss. He's got a lot of weird losses throughout his Marcin Prachnio fucking comes to mind. But Jamahal Hill has recently not looked his best. The Alex Pereira KO comes to mind. The Yuri Prochazka performance, while it wasn't super bad, he did win the second round. He was very unathletic, seemingly, and also was swinging at ghosts for a large majority of that fight. Ended up getting tagged up pretty bad throughout. I do think that Khalil Rountree can knock out Jamahal Hill. I think Jamahal Hill can knock out Khalil Rountree. I think we're just going to have to see what type of shape Jamahal Hill shows up in. Because I think Khalil will always have a speed advantage over Jamahal Hill. I think power advantage, maybe Jamahal. I'm not sure, but technique-wise, Khalil is always going to be more technical than a lot of people he fights, especially at light heavyweight outside of Alex Pereira, of course. But Jamahal Hill, I don't know. We're going to have to see how he looks going into this fight, because if he's wearing knee guards again, I can't fucking pick a dude wearing knee sleeves, okay? The co-main event confirmed Rafael Fiziev versus Ignacio Bahamondes, now unranked for some reason, because Joel Alvarez got bumped up, even though he hasn't beat a single ranked opponent yet. I love Joel Alvarez, but keep my boy Ignacio ranked. He beat number 13, for fuck's sake. This matchup's crazy, because you have a guy like Rafael Fiziev, who hasn't fought an unranked guy in seemingly forever. When was the last time he fought an unranked opponent? It wouldn't, because Moicano was ranked. Was Moicano ranked? I feel like Moicano was ranked. I don't know. But Rafael Fiziev, you have a guy going from fighting the deepest depths of the division, RDA when he's still top 10. Gaethje twice. Fucking Gamrot, of course. Moicano, as mentioned earlier. He's fighting really good guys. Brad Riddell, for fuck's sake. People forget about Brad. People forget, man. Brad Riddell is really good. And then you got Ignacio Bahamondes, who right now is seemingly unstoppable. I think the last fight, I know the last fight he lost was Ludovic Klein. I don't know if Bahamondes is on a 3 or 4 fight win streak, but what does need to be mentioned is the people that he is beating. While he isn't fighting the high highs of the division, he did just sub Jalen Turner in the first round with very little consequences suffered in that fight. We don't see that a lot of the time with Jalen Turner. When people fight Jalen Turner, they usually get dropped or they go to fucking war with him, right? We see Bobby Green get fucking murdered by him. We see Moicano almost gets literally slammed in the first round. Not Gaethje, fucking Gamrot had a very competitive fight with him. Dan Hooker almost died. He had his fucking face broken and arm broken with a fucking head kick. People, when they fight Jalen Turner, they usually get, fucked up. But if you win, you're usually going to, end with some scratches. Ignacio left unscathed. I think that this is a strikers-friendly matchup. Ignacio, very long, rangy. Fiziev, of course, having Muay Thai in his back pocket. Very good, crafty kicks. Maybe he tries to wrestle a little bit like we saw in the Gaethje rematch. I don't know. It's a very, maybe, momentum-heavy fight. Fiziev has dropped 3 in a row. Ignacio is on either a 3 or 4 fight win streak. I'm not too sure. I know the Christos Giagos fight falls under this. I know the Manuel Torres fight falls under this. I know the Jalen Turner fight falls under this. I don't know if there's another one mixed in there. It most likely is. But Ignacio just putting on a highlight reel after highlight reel, back to back to back, looking unstoppable as of right now. So we'll have to see what they look like on fight day, because we've seen Fiziev talk about moving down a weight class, which I'm not a huge fan of, honestly, but we'll see what happens. The featured fight that I think is most likely going to be the featured fight is Curtis Blaydes versus Rizvan Kuniev. Again, rescheduled. I don't really feel like talking about this fight. I think you all know how I feel about this fight. It doesn't make any sense. I think Curtis Blaydes beats Rizvan Kuniev. He is just a fat guy. Curtis Blaydes is being heavily underappreciated. He should win this fight decently easily. Rizvan Kuniev is not that good. Another fight that got announced that I think will probably serve as the fourth fight on the main card, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Kyoji Horiguchi. I had to dig in a bag and find this photo of Kyoji Horiguchi. Kyoji, if you don't know, has fought for titles in the UFC. He either got cut or released, I'm pretty sure, or he just became a free agent and signed with Rizin, I believe. It was either Rizin or One Championship. I want to say it was Rizin, because I think I know he fought Kaya Sakura and Manel Kopp outside of the promotion. Kyoji's good. He's got a wild record. He did fight Sergio Pettis, though, didn't he, and got chinned by him. That was in Bellator or PFL. I think he just signed with PFL recently, and then he wasn't fighting. You see that a lot with a lot of PFL fighters now. They're coming back. They're kind of leaving their circuits and then coming back to the UFC because they realize that the PFL isn't going to fight with them or isn't going to give them fights for some reason. But anyways, Kyoji Horiguchi is really solid, and Tagir Ulanbekov is really solid as well. I think it's going to be a traditional flyweight scrap, just kind of all over the place, slugging around, kind of just landing a lot of shit on each other. I think it should go down as a finish, maybe. I don't know. Kyoji and Tagir fight pretty wild. They're both like stylistically very different from each other. Tagir is like 5'11" for flyweight. I swear, this guy, I think they claim that he's 5'9". He's like the same height as Islam Makhachev. He's fucking huge for flyweight. And Kyoji is like 5'5", I think. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. The other fight, this was a fight that I made up personally. I think Billy Quarantillo versus Hyder Emil is a fucking banger matchup that you could throw on this card. You have a guy who technically reps Asia in Hyder Emil. He reps the Philippines. And you have an event based in Western Asia, Eastern Asia kind of guy with Hyder Emil. Billy Quarantillo, I think just kind of name value-wise, makes sense for a Hyder Emil 2 fight. I know he did just beat William Gomez, who was probably really close to being ranked. But I think entertainment value-wise, I think this fight makes a whole lot of sense. I think this fight has a high possibility of leaving with a highlight reel. Most likely Hyder Emil knocking out Billy Quarantillo, but we can't be beggars and we can't be choosers, okay? Beggars can't be choosers, all right? I think that this fight has a very a high finish rate possibility. And also, even if it doesn't, they're just going to slug it out. Like, Billy Quarantillo is going to meet Hyder Emil in the middle. There's not going to really be a moment where Billy Quarantillo is going to allow Hyder Emil to walk him down. Right? Billy Quarantillo's whole game is walking people down. Hyder Emil's game is walking people down. They're going to clash in the center, and someone's going to get fucking slept. Most likely Billy Quarantillo. But anyways, this also gives an ability to raise Hyder Emil's stock. You have a very well-known fan favorite guy in Billy Quarantillo, who everyone knows is just kind of a mediocre slugger, going up against a very touted prospect, undefeated. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. It's also entertaining as fuck. The next event that I got an announcement for was UFC 318 in New Orleans, Louisiana. The main event, of course, being announced as Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier III for the BMF belt. There's a lot of discussion going on, a lot of discourse, a lot of either liking or not liking. A lot of people aren't huge fans of the matchup, which I can understand. I understand why some people don't like this matchup. I always knew this was going to be the matchup. I wanted to put this as the co-main for UFC 314 in my card builder video. I'm pretty sure I said that. Excuse me. I always knew this was going to be the fight that they were going to make. It honestly, people will say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I understand why they're making it. For one, you have a guy in Holloway who is unironically probably was at his highest stock in UFC history, and that's saying something after the Gaethje KO. Even though he was a big famous champion for for like a couple years prior to that. He got probably the most infamous KO of all time, and that's saying something when you got a Joaquin Buckley Impacasagne KO walking around, right? He fucking shinned Gaethje in the last second of UFC 300 of the BMF title fight in the last second, and he was beating his ass. Poirier came off a crazy fight against Islam Makhachev, the most entertaining fight on the card. Very cool fight. Had a couple cool moments, beating on the body. You can't really make a Poirier versus Sarukian. I don't think Sarukian would want that matchup. And anyways, I don't think that Poirier beats Sarukian. This is a fight, even though I think Max wins, I'll say that first and foremost, I think Max Holloway is going to beat Dustin Poirier at UFC 318. Mostly due to the fact that I think Holloway looked too good at lightweight against Gaethje. I know Gaethje and Poirier are completely different fighters, completely different styles, but I think Holloway's speed and technique translates over to a Dustin Poirier matchup as well. I know Gaethje isn't as defensively sound as well, but Poirier doesn't really, he takes damage pretty bad as well compared to a Gaethje, and I think Poirier slows down as well, similarly to Justin Gaethje. And I think Poirier doesn't swing wild enough to catch a Holloway. I think you got to set it up either really good or kind of swing wildly in a pocket exchange, kind of what happened when Gaethje dropped him. I think Poirier-Holloway, even though a lot of people don't like it, I like the matchup. I don't mind it. Listen, it's going to be very entertaining. Do I really care about who wins? Actually, I think I do care a lot. I wanted to see Poirier end on a win. I want to see him retire, run off into the sunset on a win. We're probably not going to see that. But if we're going to see a violence matchup fulfilled, you could do any fight, but I think Holloway-Poirier also having the BMF title on the line, even though it is a bullshit belt, kind of just elevates it a little bit, makes it a pay-per-view that, you don't have to have them serve as the co-main. You know what I mean? You can make it the main event without having a title fight. It saves a title fight for another date. So I think that like business-wise, the matchup makes sense. Maybe fan favorite-wise, we wanted to see maybe Poirier Gaethje 3, maybe an actual trilogy that does make sense. But Gaethje, I don't think he would have taken that fight. I think Gaethje's dead set on getting a title shot or getting a number one contenders fight. Even though Poirier would make him a number one contender further, I think he's more like, I want to fight for the title now. And Max Holloway, moving up fully to lightweight. We'd love to see that. I think we're just going to have to see what happens on fight day. Co-main event, a co-main event that I made, that I think does make some sort of sense in a weird way. 5-round co-main event, Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. If they're dead set on not giving Arman Tsarukyan a title shot, you're going to have to give him somebody else. And in my opinion, even though he did fuck up 311 in a way that's incomprehensible, give him a Dan Hooker. Also, these guys have beef. They don't like each other. Instead of doing Arman Tsarukyan versus Gaethje, here you go. Do a matchup where Arman doesn't really like the other guy. You know what I mean? Where Arman, we've heard him on tape say that Dan Hooker's a bitch. We've seen Dan Hooker on tape call Arman Tsarukyan a daddy's boy, and that he has daddy's money, and he thinks that he's all hot shit, and that Dan Hooker would fuck him up. All right, and Dan Hooker's in a position now where it's like, you can give him these big fights. You know what I mean? And Arman Tsarukyan, I don't want to see him fight Ilia Topuria. I don't want to see him lose. I want to see Arman Tsarukyan actually rightfully get a fight that he can win. It's either you give Arman the title or you give him this, right? Because now Holloway and Poirier, number 4 and 5, are booked. You have Oliveira, who he just beat. By the way, he just beat Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira should be fighting fucking, I don't know, probably Gaethje in a rematch or Ilia Topuria. You know what I mean? Like, stylistically, I think this matchup benefits Arman Tsarukyan a lot. I think he would probably ground and pound TKO, or maybe sub Dan Hooker even. I think just it also is very viable. They hate each other. They got a lot of despair. They don't really like each other. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. A featured fight that I think could work stylistically for UFC 318 is Yuri Prochazka versus Carlos Ulberg. Carlos didn't take a whole lot of damage this March. I know Carlos isn't the type to get back in there. If you give him the incentive, right? A month earlier, because there are reports circulating that they're gonna try and get Ankalaev and Alex Bahia done at 319 in August. A month earlier, you set up a number one contenders fight with Yuri Prochazka, Carlos Ulberg. Set that up, right? Make it a clear number one contender. Because if Alex beats Magomed, they're not going to give Magomed the ability to get a trilogy because they don't want him to be champion. If Magomed wins, you're going to need someone to immediately throw at him, right? Because then you could force him to fight in October in Abu Dhabi. I'm joking, but you need to have someone, because I'm tired of seeing champions inactive. You need to have a rightful number one contender set up before a champion fights, right? Hence why I'm doing 2 lightweight fights that have very high stakes hidden within them. Maybe if Dan Hooker beats Arman Tsarukyan, he's not going to fight anybody else. He's going to wait for a fucking title. But if Arman wins, then he gets a title shot. Holloway beats Poirier, he's probably going to be a decently sized favorite. Then you could do Holloway versus like the loser of Oliveira Ilya, right? You could do something like that, or the loser of Gaethje versus Islam, right? You set it up further. You layer it up. You set up your next move. Prochazka Ulberg not only sets up the next light heavyweight title challenger, it sets it up before the light heavyweight title is even on the fucking line, right? So you have a guy who can be a backup of a title fight as well, just in case it falls through. And you set up a future event. You have them meet in the cage. If Yuri beats Ulberg, which I think Ulberg would probably lose to Yuri Prochazka. I think Yuri's too wild for Ulberg and would actually push him against the fence and not allow him to play his silly little Timbuktu game. I think Yuri would maybe chin Ulberg, honestly. And also, you give Ulberg the only really like prospect, I guess, at light heavyweight that's like amassed a huge following because he's city kickboxing, even though no one really likes him. Give him a chance to really solidify himself. His last 2 fights have been against Volkan Oezdemir and Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz, even though we love Jan, he's 41 years old, all right? Volkan, he's 36. I know Ulberg's 34 or 35 or something like that. It gives a chance to have maybe a bloodbath. Because I think Yuri always is entertaining. You're rarely going to find a fight where Yuri Prochazka is not entertaining. I feel like he's one of the only guys that can make an Ulberg fight somewhat palpable. So, make that fight. Another fight on this card that you could make, Song Yadong versus Rob Font. Rankings-wise, I think it makes a whole lot of sense. Rob Font is on a 2-fight win streak. To be fair to him, John Matsumoto and Kyler Phillips. Song Yadong coming off a win after a huge layoff over Henry Cejudo. Number 6 versus number 8. Song Yadong doesn't really have a fight available above him because he has lost to Jan and Sandhagen. And I don't think a fight, you could do him versus Umar, but it seems more and more apparent that they're going to do Umar versus Piotr Jan in Abu Dhabi, in my opinion. So you could do that. And there's nobody really else for Song Yadong to fight. He didn't take really any damage against Henry Cejudo. That was in February. 4 months later down the line, Rob Font fought on that same fucking card against John Matsumoto. He didn't take a whole lot of damage. And even then, Rob Font recently has been decently active. So make this fight. It'll be a simple fight. It has finish written all over it. Probably Song Yadong chinning Rob Font. But also Rob Font maybe finding some strikes against Song Yadong, maybe pitter-pattering his way to a decision. I think Song Yadong would win this fight easily. Also just brings more name value to the card. Song Yadong, everyone loves Song Yadong. Pause. Rob Font, he's kind of just like a staple of the bantamweight division. Kind of just always been there. And to open up the main card, you have Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen, I believe, is from Louisiana. He's somewhere from the South. I forget. I'm pretty sure it is Louisiana. Him and Vettori have beef, right? Vettori fought in March, Allen in February. They've already technically fought each other in a casino. So you're not going to need to really make anything for these guys to fight. They both already were scheduled to fight. You know that they're willing to fight each other. They were supposed to fight when Allen fought Chris Curtis for the second time. Vettori pulled out. Vettori seemingly already wants to get back in there. Was disappointed with his performance against Roman Dolidze. I think you do another rematch. Not another rematch, because they technically haven't fought each other. But bad blood sells. Sells tickets. People know it. Yeah, these are my cards. These are my reactions to some of these fights. You know, Holloway Poirier III, Rountree versus Jamahal Hill rebooking, and of course UFC Atlanta Kamaru versus Buckley. What do you think of these cards? I thought I would, instead of just making a news video, I thought I would implement a cool little thing, try and build a main card for it as well. Some of these already did have main cards essentially built for them, like Baku. Literally 4 of these fights are confirmed. The only fight I added was Billy Quarantillo, Hyder Mill, and same with Atlanta. I only made Tim Elliott, Asakura, and Chris Curtis versus Cesar Almeida. The rest of these fights are confirmed. UFC 318, though, you know, this is basically all manufactured by me. So, yeah. What would you guys like to see on these cards? What do you think about the new fights that have been announced by Dana White recently? And if you like the video, give it a like. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you like the video. Of course, I'll see you guys when I see you. This weekend, UFC Des Moines, Corey Sandhagen versus Davison Figueiredo. Should be a very cool fight. Co-main event featuring Renier de Ritter, Bo Nickel. Should be a good one. I'll break it down probably Thursday or Wednesday. I'll try and get another video out for you guys if I can. I'll see you guys when I see you. Peace.